Coming up on Windows Weekly, I, Mikah Sargent, am subbing in for Leo Laporte this week. He will be back next week. But this week, I talked to Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott about, first and foremost, Windows 11, the new preview builds, and how, honestly, not a whole lot is changing. Not many new features, except for the beta channel. Then we talk about Patch Tuesday and Microsoft Paint adding a new feature. I quiz Paul and Rich on their Microsoft Paint usage. We talk about Intel announcing Thunderbolt 5, the iPhone adding USB-C, the passing of Dennis Austin, the co-creator of PowerPoint, and round things out, of course, as always, with the wonderful tips and picks of the week, including a great brown liquor pick. All that and more coming up on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly, episode 846, with Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, and Mikah Sargent. Recorded Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. Purple is for jazz hands. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. More than 10,000 clients worldwide rely on Melissa for full-spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date this holiday season. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. And by CacheFly, delivering content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods and 30% faster than other major CDNs. Join CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. For a limited time, CacheFly is offering a free 5 terabyte tier plan. For other plans, learn how to get your first month free at cachefly.com. All right, it is time for Windows Weekly, the show where we talk to two of the foremost Windows watchers in the world. I almost said Winders watchers, but that's because of Leo. I am not Leo. I am Mikah Sargent subbing in for Leo, who is currently in Rhode Island, hanging out with his mom, and will be back soon. But until then, it is my great pleasure to say hello to Thurrott.com's own Paul Thurrott.
Hello, Mikah.
Hello, you're in Macungie, yes?
I am.
Yes.
The jewel of Pennsylvania.
the true jewel. Hashtag Macungie life. Well, it is good to see you. It's been a while, and I'm looking forward to today's show. We are also joined by Richard Campbell, who I have to ask you where you're coming to us from, because I know it changes all the time.
This is the last show from Coquitlam. So we've been slowly moving out of this house for the past few months up to our place in Madeira Park, and this is the last day. So I've literally set aside a couple of hours to do this, then I clear out of this office for the very last time. I'm actually on the portable rig, the one I used from the Netherlands last week in Copenhagen, the week before that. So
wow.
The fancy rig is in boxes still up in Mad Park, so it's not set up yet.
And I hear you're going to be doing the show on a plane, live from the plane.
Not doing that. No.
Oh, okay.
But you may as well.
Yeah, well, once they get Starlink, on those planes, maybe I will. But now I'm going to have to take next week off because I'll literally be flying to New Zealand.
Gotcha.
But I'll do a show. I got one from Sydney, and one from Auckland, and one from Perth. And then I'll be back in Madeira.
Yeah, you are a mover and a shaker. Very impressive.
Some good news, some not so good news. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, let us get into. Oh, I'm coming from Petaluma, California. For anyone who is curious,
you didn't go to the studios.
Couldn't be bothered to come into the studio.
Yes, I could not be bothered.
Crawled out of bed, threw a hat on, and
too far.
Yep. It's bed's right there. No. Yes. The beauty of podcasting is occasionally we can do it from other places.
Yes.
So let us go ahead and get this show rolling. First and foremost, we've got to talk about where Windows 11 stands right now with the new insider preview builds.
Yeah, just as a bit of a reminder, background or whatever, we are expecting Microsoft to sort of finalize. I say that with air quotes because nothing is ever finalized these days, but what will become Windows 11 23H2 anytime now. In fact, I expected that in August, and it's getting down to the wire. Don't forget that Microsoft has a big special event next Thursday, a week from tomorrow. That is not a Windows event per se, but they will be discussing some of the AI stuff in Windows, and I assume this relates to Windows 11 23H2 in particular. So we shall see. But man, there has been no movement on the insider preview as far as getting towards something that looks like it's about to ship, right? Because even though they don't like to talk about stuff like this, you would typically see a release preview switchover where, they're getting it prepped, for the final release.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they're going to be ready for next week.
That's what I'm starting to think. So I've been working on the theory that the schedule this year will be the same as it has been for the past 2 years. For that to be true, do I not have anything? I do. For that to be true, week D, September, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, the 26th would be the day that they released the preview version of what is Windows 11 version 23H2, that enablement package for people who want to grab it. However, I mean, it's Microsoft, so they could technically do it up to about the 19th, I guess, in about a week, and that would be enough in their minds. they tend to do things.
Time is relative.
Yeah.
Delivery time doubly so. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I had a hard, I just saw this again, just randomly. I was going through all my archive stuff recently, and in 2003, so literally 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, I interviewed a couple of people from the original NT team. One was Mark Lukowski, who's one of the core members that came over with Dave Cutler, and he described the way they build Windows with all the branches and everything. And that was confusing to me at the time. And I look at it now, and I would pray for that simplicity because I just I don't understand. Yeah, I'd give anything for that clarity. We just don't have that today. So, what we have is an insider program that has 4 channels, one of which we believe, no one's ever said this, but this is just based on, I don't know, an informed opinion, Canary, that it is probably going to at some point represent Windows 12, right, which they've never announced either. And then we have the dev, dev, beta, and release preview channels, right, each of which in the past used to map to some version of Windows, and today kind of map to nothing. Microsoft has not said this, but in the build itself, you can see that the beta channel today represents 23H2. So that's the channel above release preview. So when it gets to release preview, you know it's coming. That's the only thing I can say there. So, but we don't have a release preview build for the past 8 days, so I can't.
I wonder if they will announce Win 12 in this upcoming event. That wouldn't be a bad move. I do think whatever they talk about has to be some combination of things that are shipping short term and things that are shipping long term, right? You want to do the right amount of PR for that stuff to kind of keep the excitement going. It's been a big year for Microsoft and AI, obviously. Well, it's clearly Windows Copilot has captured everyone's attention. Am I being sarcastic?
Yeah. So, I mean, no. And so I would say Microsoft 365 Copilot, interesting, right? There's some interesting stuff there. Yeah. The Windows one is a little tough. I don't think this is not something I think this is just a rumor, but one of the things they're rumored to talk about next week is, I don't know what they're calling them, extensions or plugins or whatever for the Windows Copilot. And my understanding of that is that all of the Copilot extensibility is probably compatible. So maybe this is something where that would be
wise and also shocking this early in the cycle to have standards between teams like this. My expectation this early into bringing a new set of tools like this is every team's running on their own.
Yep. And I can't remember what they said at Build about this, but is there any notion of cross compatibility between OpenAI or ChatGPT and Bing or Bing Chat extensibility?
Not really.
Is that
no.
Is that a thing? No. So,
but I would think at least inside of Microsoft, if Kevin Scott's got more influence than I would expect him to have, that he's actually persuaded multiple teams to stick to certain API standards, like kudos to him, like, holy man.
Hey, benefit everybody. Well, I mean, look, you can't know today which of these will be the most popular, whatever that means, but adhering to whatever that standard is does make sense. It especially makes sense, I think, for Windows, because I don't think this is going to be a good one otherwise.
And the sad part is, I think really it could be, right? Yeah. Like I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it's got a tough road ahead, but this should be the hub. You should, at the operating system level, say, hey, here's my goal today. And it could solicit into any piece of software to help you. Like, that's very compelling. Imagine actually making operating systems relevant again.
Right. No, that's dumb. So
I'm talk crazy talk now.
No, I'm just kidding. I guess the only niggling thing in the back of my brain is because of Microsoft's kind of cross-platform focus today. Microsoft 365 might even be a better choice for that, because then it would be everywhere, right? Because Microsoft 365 is part of Windows. I know, but yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the little pane does on the side.
Now you've got me thinking, Paul. When does M365 have more customers than Windows?
Oh,
like, I don't know if that's true today.
I don't think it is, and I don't think it.
But it's possible.
Yes, it might even be inevitable.
Yeah. And it would be a profound statement.
Right. Yep.
This is something that's odd to me, because some of these announcements or potential announcements do seem kind of big, and yet they're not streaming this event. What?
Right. Well,
why?
Okay. So they are going to play it back right after it ends, right? So 3 hours after the start of it, I think they will make it available to everybody. So everyone gets to see it that day. I guess, I suppose from my perspective as a journalist, which I'll also put in air quotes, that it gives me time to maybe to go see some demos and do some things and write something up. Maybe, I don't know, but I can't imagine that's why they're doing it. Things have always been streamed or have long been streamed, and especially during the pandemic era, that was the only way things happened. So I don't know. Yep, it's an open question. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm aware that there's been a battle inside of Microsoft over in-person, online, streamed, and the different teams, approach this from different ways. I wonder if they looked at the price tag of streaming being the real-time part
versus uploading it to YouTube.
Versus just record it,
right,
and then we do an edit and push it up. And if there was a major hitch, we'll delay it an hour while we fix the hitch.
This is like the delay they put into sports games. They want to, if in case anyone swears, or in this case, AI would be the one swearing.
I was going to say, if they're doing real, actual live demos of AI, then they could fix that.
Was the original February event, the Bing AI, Bing chat event, was that literally live, or did they put that video out a few hours later too? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I think it was live, actually. I
think it might have been too. And although Microsoft got a lot of credit for that at the time, that event, and then Google was, I think, unfairly criticized afterwards because of whatever mistakes occurred during their own event.
Right.
You can go back and watch it for yourself.
Not like Bing AI.
There were plenty of mistakes in the Bing demo. It was no different. So it could be. I think we're all a little sensitive to this, especially for the companies that are the platform providers. Maybe they want to make sure there isn't anything stupid that happens. Although,
got it. That makes much
people
more
like
sense.
me are going to be like, "Hey, do you want to know what really happened?" I mean, So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. The short answer is we don't know. Anywho, that's happening next week. So hopefully also next week something in the line of Windows 11 23H2 news, but nothing this week. So there have been, since we last met, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 builds, 2 each to dev and canary, 1 to beta. Minor changes or nothing, depending on what we're talking about, which is what makes this all the more mysterious. Interestingly, the only one that had any even kind of modicum of changes was the beta build, which you'll remember is the one I said is going to be 23H2. And you would expect at this late stage in the game, you wouldn't be seeing that. But those changes are minor. So Focus Session, which is a feature of the Clock app and also integrated with the OS, is getting a widget in the widgets interface. So there's a 3-way integration that is just bizarre via an update to the Clock app, of course. Another way you can start and stop Focus Sessions. Who cares? Microsoft, I don't remember how they announced it or revealed this, but at some point in the past few months did say that the chat icon in the Windows 11 taskbar, which has been there for 2 years now, and pops up a fairly unique UI that is not actually an app. It's a front end to the consumer Teams app. And then if you do anything with it, the full Teams app will run, and then will always run because Microsoft loves auto start. But they're getting rid of that, and this is the first build to show that. And so there'll be a shortcut to what is now called Microsoft Teams Free. I don't think this name change is going to help.
No.
It will be easier to unpin because you can just right-click it. So I think everyone will. I know I will. and get rid of it because nobody wants to use Microsoft Teams free. And then they're also adding more inbox apps, not email apps, but the apps that come with Windows, to the list of apps that you can uninstall. This has been something that's grown slowly over the past few releases. So Camera, Cortana, Photos, and People can all be uninstalled starting with this build. Cortana is an odd choice because Cortana doesn't work anymore. It's still in Windows, but if you run it, nothing will happen. You just get a black window, so that's fun. But anyway, you'll be able to remove that, and presumably it will just not be part of some future Windows release. And then a bunch of fixes for my favorite friend, the new File Explorer, which I went on an extended rant about last week, and the less said about that, the better. So that's what we got. Not much. And that's kind of the only substantive updates of any of these things. Again, leading to that natural question, like what's going on? Like you would think.
Do you not see this? Yeah. I almost wonder if we're seeing the end of summer vacation.
Okay. Sure.
This was work that was being done in August, and there wasn't a lot of work being done then. And then it takes time to go through the pipeline for a while before we're seeing it in mid-September. And so it's the same with Patch Tuesday. Like it all seems so slow, and I think it's just the lag from summer vacation.
Okay. Somebody forgot to do their summer homework. I see.
Something.
Because we were going to finalize this thing, jerks. And I that could be. I think the bugginess of File Explorer in particular might be a problem. This is such a core app. I talked about that last week. Again, I promised I wouldn't talk about it again, but I do think that's an issue. So we'll see. And then the other thing that just happened was yesterday was Patch Tuesday, right? So now we talk about week B and week D. And so week B is Patch Tuesday week. So Tuesday of week B was yesterday. This is when Microsoft ships all the cumulative updates that update all the in-support versions of Windows. The one for Windows 11 version 22H2, which is the most recent version, right? The one we basically only care about. Very minor because we know the week D preview update that we got 2 weeks previous was very minor, right? Hover behavior on the search box and the taskbar, some new default app behaviors that aren't going to impact anybody, and then a new policy for businesses. So nothing dramatic. The one before that, I think that was the week or the month we had none. I think we had no updates for the first time this year. And again, normally I would think we're kind of winding down this release, right? We're getting ready for 23H2, but now it's I don't know.
Soon.
We will see. Yeah, well,
soon as
it's got to happen eventually. I guess these things are liquid. What's the difference? I mean, I'm so old school. I not only wish for things to be named the way they used to be, like use release candidate branding and RTM and all that kind of stuff, the gold master and all that, even though those terms are out of date. But we use out of date terms all the time. Go to the tape, or whatever. There's no tape.
The film,
yeah, I'm just old school like that. But I also sort of feel like when you're creating software, maybe there should be like a formal adhere to schedule and communications and documentation and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just
let me just tell you, Paul, I'm with you. I agree. Yeah. I just don't want you to feel alone in the universe.
Thank you.
That you're the only one out there shouting into the void.
Being a mature industry enough that it actually has standardized terminology. Like
I'm just saying ones and zeros. It's ones and zeros.
It's all ones and zeros. Why can't we
should be the most reliable thing that could be?
Aren't ones and zeros. Exactly. And they are the problem. So let's get rid of
sevens and 1.2s. Anyhow. Okay. So this is kind of came out of nowhere. In fact, there was no context to this whatsoever, leading me to believe that this release was a mistake and was supposed to be held for this event next week. And they just ran with it. And because it's such a small thing, who cares? Which is in the Windows Insider program, I believe in Canary and Dev, not in beta. There is now a new version of the Microsoft Paint app. Now, I mentioned this app, I think last week as well, if not the week before, because this is the app they so thoroughly screwed up in Windows 11 2 years ago and then spent 2 years not fixing. And then sometime over the past couple of months, they actually fixed it. And thank you. And of course, I'm thinking now they're going to leave it alone, right? No, they're going to keep screwing with it because that's what Microsoft does. So they added this feature just, again, out of the blue, which is like a background removal feature. We're all familiar with this, right? Obviously, tools like Photoshop have this kind of thing where you can kind of select a color or whatever it is in an image and it auto selects around something, or we can do this on our phones, right? Google and Apple phones have this capability, I'm sure. It's just, except you touch it. Okay. Just there was no explanation of why. A couple of questions come up out of this, like, well, why, obviously, but this is not this is a fairly advanced feature when you think about it. It's also something you would use for very specific purposes. It seems like something that should be in the Photos app, which has its own very involved editor for photos, and not in Paint. I mean, people don't typically use Paint to edit photos. Also, when you think about the list of features maybe Paint could have, why would you start with this one? Like, wouldn't you make a list of like 50 features, like advanced image editing features, and start at the top, like a tool that could make the like a line level or a or whatever, like a, it seems like there should be other things. This is a weird one-off feature to come to a random app that I don't think very many people use.
Do you use Paint?
I use it every single day.
Yeah, I thought I remembered you saying that.
I make my Christmas card with it. Like,
wow.
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. I use it extensively.
So now you can cut out Christmas trees and drop them, with this new background removal tool.
I'm not going to do that.
Fine.
But anyway, it's weird to me. And my guess is this is going to be one of several AI features that they announced for Windows, and one of several that will probably be part of Paint, because this can't be the only one. Because this, think about it. I mean, this kind of background removal is probably AI. It's certainly more AI than spell checking,
right?
Which is also AI now, by the way, because everything is. So that's my guess. They had a really short blog post about it. They didn't really explain why they were doing this or what it was, if it was part of something bigger. They just said, "Oh, it's out there. You'll notice it, so we might as well write about it." So that's something to keep an eye on for next week. I wouldn't be surprised if this factors into next week in a small way, but as part of something bigger.
Maybe they've got, what's it called for you folks? Telemetry of people going in.
What do you folks call it?
You folks.
I don't call it anything.
Oh, okay, good.
Were they, I guess, like feedback? I don't know. Anyway, analytics. That's what I would call it.
Yep.
But
usage statistics
of somebody going around and doing this very difficult selection.
Oh.
And they've seen so many people doing that they thought, you know what? Let's save people time. Let's bring this into make it a little bit easier.
This felt almost interny to me. Right?
Yeah.
Like there was a summer intern.
Like someone's like, "Hey, look what I did."
And it had access to that code base and just made a thing. And you're like, ship it.
There, I'm not going to be able to pull this out off the top of my head, but there are the newest version of the Photos app, which came to Windows 11 somewhere midstream. It doesn't matter. It's the one that supports iCloud Photos if you want to do that, but not Google Photos, because God forbid. And it's always, this app has long had, reasonable editing features. This one actually is I can't think of the features, unfortunately. I apologize. But there's actually some features missing that were in the previous version of the Photos app from an editing perspective. It seems like this would have been a better choice, for that. Just the Photos app, that is. But I don't know. I can't explain because they don't explain, and I don't.
Yeah, honestly, this is where the intern idea came from. It's like, there's a team that takes care of photos right now, and they're going to do that their way. I don't know if there's anybody who's paying attention to Paint. Somebody wanted to tinker with it. Code base is available. Ta-da.
Oh, I'm sure they're passing it around like a cheap beer at a frat party. It's like, just, everyone can have a sip. Anyone want to touch photo? Hey, it's Paint. Remember Paint was a big deal. Want to screw with it? There we go.
I just feel special because they contributed to Paint now.
What do you do with it when you use it every day, Paul? Is it for adjustments to images?
Yeah, so I put a graphic on the top of every article that I do, right? So there's a couple of things that Paint just does really well, and I'm just used to. I know all the keyboard shortcuts and everything, which was why those changes they made in Windows 11 were so infuriating. They killed the keyboard shortcuts for about a year and a half. They work again now, thank God. But it's just I do use Photoshop Elements in my case, but for the kind of the big stuff, and I would use it for this kind of background removal for sure if I needed that. But yeah, the final output often comes right out of Paint. That's just not every time, but every day I use it. I mean that literally. There is not a day I don't open Paint. But anyhow.
Well, I know now I'm kind of looking forward to going to Thurrott.com and seeing all these weird overlaid images.
Well, if you look at my Christmas card, that's probably, it was at one point at the Twit card. Every year or if I send it to you, I don't know who I send it to exactly, but
yeah, we get it.
I hope you get it. That's 100% Paint. It's like, The only thing I use Photoshop for in that case is I take the original photos and I shrink them down to some size where I can fit them within the blocks. But then I use Paint for everything else. There you go. There's one. 2022. Yeah. So it's all Paint. Oh, no, almost all Paint, I should say.
And
Okay.
Richard, you said you use it too?
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing, cropping images. It's often grabbing screenshots and just wanting to trim a portion out for something. Like it's pretty normal. Just a quick way to grab a photo, grab an image from something, paste it somewhere where you can get it trimmed up, and then just drop it into PowerPoint, something along those lines.
It doesn't have layers, does it? Doesn't support layers? Okay.
No.
Yeah. So it remains relatively basic.
The number of times more than adequate apps have appeared to replace Paint cannot be counted, including apps that support layers like Paint.net or Photoshop or Affinity Photo or whatever. There's a million of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Paint has that same position that Notepad has. There's a ton of potential.
It's another app I use every single day. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do not screw with it. Actually, one thing you can tell from the screenshot that somebody posted to the Discord, at least, which is that this app, let's see, originally it was called PC Paintbrush. Remember, this app has a humongous UI at the top that looks like a ribbon. It's not
gigantic.
A ribbon. It's just a gigantic toolbar. You can't collapse it.
Are
a
you
real
kidding
ribbon,
me?
you could hide that thing. So when I edited the image you're looking at now to fit in my homepage, I needed to go with 16 by 9. I had to manually crop this thing down to 16 by 9 to make it fit, which is, it's like the old Word joke with all the toolbars open and the only thing left for text was this tiny little thing you could type in. That's exactly what Paint is now. It's
why can't you collapse? That's so goofy.
Because it's not actually that's the thing. The UI control exists. They did not use it. It's this to further his intern theory. I think there's something to this.
Is it possible to hack these apps?
I just use the one from Windows 2000 or something.
Yeah.
Where you could just hop in and turn on the little feature that lets you collapse things, or does that not? That's not possible.
Not that I know of. I would love that. I would never have that thing on.
Yeah. Why do I need all of the palette colors available at all times?
I know, like it's 1990 or something.
Or like I'm actually painting with a palette in my hand.
All right. So
man.
I think we talked about one of these two things last week, but we should discuss the fact that a lot of the talk around Windows these days is about this kind of thing, like these little front end UI things that people notice, right? And honestly, I do feel like this Windows team, very uniquely, I think in the history of Windows, cares more about the superfluous front end stuff, the UI and the prettiness of it and whatever, than it does about the technical stuff, like the File Explorer stuff that I'm so concerned about or whatever. But there are two things that are kind of, I would say, are low level ish that are happening in Windows 11 soon, and they both need to be discussed, right? I think we touched on this last week that Microsoft is removing the legacy troubleshooters in Windows 11. That's happening right now. In fact, most of them are already gone. And then and I haven't written about this one yet, but Microsoft is killing third-party printer drivers, which seems kind of bizarre, right? But Richard,
I love
please
that we're talking about this.
I have a theory. I have a theory about this one, but I want to know what's your explanation for this?
I think this is a byproduct of the fallout of Print Nightmare, which was 2 years ago now, where a major vulnerability, the sort of point and shoot print capabilities that you had inside of offices required an elevated permission system that happened automatically, and it was being attacked as a vector within a hack to elevate privileges for malware. And so they very rapidly, like in July, it was July of 21, they slammed out this patch, and it just broke printers all over the place. And specifically class 3 or V3 printer drivers, you needed individual elevations for each machine. You had to use UAC prompts for each of them. I think Jeremy Moskowitz made hay on this. Put on a feature in Policy Pack to do a workaround on it, and they patched it again. It was one of those cascading, here's the fix for the fix, and then a fix of the fix of the fix, as they tried to figure this thing out. But printing, the problem is that the class 4 drivers had none of these problems, but class 4 drivers live in high security contexts, and the printer manufacturers, their developers just don't want to work that way.
Sure.
And so they end up, if they do make a class 4 driver at all, it's a very minor subset of the features of the printer. And if you want all the features, you want class 3, which, this is what's going to bring this to a head. Where class 3 printers drivers work just fine? Windows
in
10
hell.
Enterprise.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I thought that's where he was going.
Yeah.
So, okay. So to me, the interesting thing about this is the Achilles. No, there are two Achilles heels for Windows and ARM right now. One is the performance, right, which is an unsolved problem, and we keep pointing to this Nuvia thing. Hopefully this year, they'll finally have the next gen chipsets, and we can solve that problem. But Microsoft has done a good job with the rest of it, and there's only one remaining compatibility niggle, and that is hardware drivers, right? My Windows comes with a bunch of class drivers of whatever stripe, and that's all that is supported on Windows and ARM. Now, for the most part, that's fine, right? So you have an all-in-one printer from HP or whatever company, and you connect it to your Windows and ARM computer, the three of you that own such a thing, and it works. It works fine. You'll be able to scan with it. You can print with it. But what you don't get is that utility that the printer maker supplied that maybe provides all those additional features that you were talking about, right? The special features for that printer.
Yeah,
for most people,
constantly tries to sell you ink.
Yeah, and that too.
Yeah,
that's a different problem Microsoft can't solve. But but that's a problem.
Oh, I beg to differ, Paul. I believe that's one of the problems they are solving right here.
Oh, okay.
If they make the drivers,
there's
a
potential antitrust inquiry happening with that, by the way.
Well, the bigger thing here is now all the Bing ads are going to show up in your printer driver.
Oh, Lord. You're going to be printing out Bing ads.
Yeah, exactly. Every other page will be like a Bing ad. Okay. Well, anyway, this will sort of level the playing field for printers for any Windows version, including ARM, right? Most Windows users will see the same thing now, which is kind of interesting. So maybe it would behoove printer makers to make their class 4 drivers better or as good as they can be.
I think you got a point there. I think the ARM situation is an important one because I bet you there's a huge number of printer manufacturers going, we're not making ARM drivers, not enough machines, no point.
Yep. By the time this thing is successful, paper won't even be a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Microsoft essentially has taken over most other driver sets for PC-related things, if you look at it today.
We do live in a world where you plug something and it works, right?
Yeah,
this was the
that's
promise
what you
of 1995.
expect. It doesn't just happen to be true.
Yeah.
The only folks that have been able to hang on to their drivers, and that was a near-miss thing going back to the Vista era, are the video card manufacturers. Because there's so few.
Definitely display drivers. Yeah, there you go. There
right?
Two.
Yeah,
well, 4 if you include Intel and AMD, I guess.
Right. So you imagine that Microsoft can afford to put teams with each of those folks to actually make sure the drivers are compliant and half write them for them anyway. But there's way too many printer manufacturers, and they're all people are affectionate towards their NVIDIA card, right? Like they would care if NVIDIA was unhappy. Nobody's unhappy if Brother's unhappy or Casio's unhappy. Or
and
Packard.
I talked last week about my this decluttering thing I'm doing. A big part of it, the thing I'm working on now, is I have this remaining pile of paper. I'm going through and scanning the stuff I need to scan. This is like going back in time, and I'm talking like medieval torture chamber times. Like it is the worst software ever made, and I don't want to embarrass the company, HP, but it is unbelievably horrible. And their software is modern, like designed recently, modern, but it is horrible. And I've tried everything. I've done like Windows imaging acquisition stuff in Photoshop, and I've tried different ways to is there a better way to? I just want to get the image out of this thing, and it is the worst. When this thing is over, I might do an Office Space on it. I might just grab a baseball bat and go back and go to town on this thing. I can't stand how terrible it is.
Well, in my creative childhood, I did learn how to make thermite, so we could just turn it into a pile of glass. It's very therapeutic. It takes about an hour for it to fully burn down, and do it in an enclosed area because it will burn through sidewalks and stuff.
No big deal.
But boy, oh boy, we took out a really recalcitrant printer that way with several ounces of thermite and just burned it up till it was a puddle.
I would like this to be a puddle. I hate it.
Yeah.
Did we talk? I can't remember. Did we talk about the legacy troubleshooters?
Yeah, I was going to say you didn't really. We went into the printer stuff, so you only mentioned it. So if you want to talk about the troubleshooting,
yeah. So I believe in any supported version of Windows 11 and insider versions too. If you go into where do you go into? If you go into Settings, Systems, is the top one, unless you're in the next version. And you scroll down, you see a troubleshoot option, and then it says other troubleshooters. If you click any of those, except for Windows Update, I think you will see the new Troubleshooter, which is based on the Get Help app. If you click Windows Update, yep, still in the old one. So the old Troubleshooters debuted in Windows 7. They were based on Control Panel. A lot of times people would just go to Control Panel and go to Troubleshooters and get to it that way. But now they've been automated, right? Since, or semi-automated. If you have a problem, like you can't get online, and you say, wherever you are in the interface, you say, help me get online, the Troubleshooter will appear.
Mm-hmm.
But this past year, they've been switching over to a more modern, I don't want to call it a framework. I think it's mostly just a front end UI, but a more modern presentation. At the very least, it could be a new framework, but a new set of troubleshooters that hopefully look better and work better and all that kind of stuff. But the funny thing is, if you actually remember what this used to look like before Windows 7, it used to be in something called Help and Support in Windows Vista, which back in the day, Richard will remember, this was a CHM based, right? The something help manager, whatever it was. CHM was like the help format back in Windows 3 and format, 95. They went to HTML at some point. That was Help and Support. That was probably XP timeframe, and then Vista as well. And this Get Help app, it's not HTML necessarily. It could be, but I don't know that it is. But it's actually very much like what used to be in Windows Vista. So I guess we've.
Well, and to be clear, CHM means compressed HTML, right? Like it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought it was something else. Okay, gotcha. Compressed HTML form. Oh, I thought it predated HTML. No, CHM. I thought it was Windows 3. I don't know. I don't actually know. Doesn't matter. But the Windows Help app back in those days when you would run HTML, the CHM files was the worst. It was horrible. It had that navigation frame on the side. It was really hard to,
What was that when you didn't expect any help from Windows Help?
Yeah, and it definitely met that bar. It was not very good. So I haven't had a chance to actually use the new troubleshooting system, meaning I haven't run into a problem where I actually need troubleshooting. But anyway, if you do, you might have noticed it because it's already transitioning.
That was a nice little brag there.
What's that?
I'm advanced enough that I haven't had to use it.
I'm
teasing you.
No, I did not. That's not what I meant.
I know you didn't. I know.
I just meant I haven't had a problem to, I'll tell you this. I've had green screens because it's an Insider Program PC on one particular computer, File Explorer related, by the way. And when that comes back, I don't see Get Help popping up to tell me what went wrong, So I don't think the underlying system is actually any smarter than it ever was. But it certainly is better looking. So, and everyone will hate it because people my age all like the old stuff, and they'll see this newbie thing and be like, and they won't be happy.
It's different. I hate it.
I know. Yeah. Is that a proportional font? Screw that.
Okay. Anything else about legacy troubleshooters or the printer drivers,
or the legacy things?
Before we take a break.
Think about scanning and paper.
All right, let's take a break then. I would love to tell you about our first sponsor of today's episode of Windows Weekly. It's Melissa, the contact data quality expert. This holiday season, as you are gearing up to send out probably loads of mail and information, let Melissa help your business meet online shopping expectations, increase ROI, reduce waste and costs associated with lost and undeliverable packages, and improve your customers' overall satisfaction. It's important that you prepare this now, not later. It's important that you kind of get things figured out before you start sending off those shopping advertisements and that other information. Retailers are working to send out information about what they've got to offer, and you could end up spending a lot of money that you don't need to spend if you're sending it to people who aren't at the addresses where you expect them to be. Here are some of Melissa's tips to help you get started. You can start by cleaning out your contact data with Melissa's data cleansing solutions. All of your stale, outdated data gets replaced with verified, accurate information, such as replacing old addresses for people who have moved and adding new emails or phone numbers. Customers always want a seamless experience with efficient delivery, so make sure your business is meeting their expectations. Next day and 2-day delivery implementation is in high demand, and Melissa ensures that addresses are verified and standardized at checkout with their autocomplete tool. Not only does having a verified address at checkout ensure the address is deliverable, but it also cuts down on keystrokes by up to 75%, which is going to make your customers' experience quicker and easier. They're not having to type in their full address, which may lead them to going, you know what, I'll do this later, and then maybe forgetting about it. Nope, it can all be taken care of right then. Offering bundles and cross-selling to existing customers is more cost-efficient than finding new ones. So the holiday season is the perfect time to do this since customers are most likely shopping for others. Profiling your data can give you a better understanding of your customer base and best-selling products, which can help you create more effective marketing strategies. And then matching and deduping your data is going to clean your database, allowing you to see a complete 360-degree view of each customer. This will also help you better understand your customers, allowing for more personalized marketing and a better customer experience. Since 1985, Melissa has specialized in global intelligence solutions and contact data quality. Melissa continually undergoes independent security audits and is SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And we thank Melissa for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. All right, let's head back to the show. I am here, Mikah Sargent, today in place of Leo Laporte, who is currently visiting his mom in Rhode Island, who will be back soon. And we are ready to talk about mobile.
For some reason, when you say that, I think of the word Mima. I've never called anyone that. So
Visit
I don't know
Mima.
I hope
We didn't do, we did. I had Mamu and Papu. I had Grandpa, Grandma. No Meemaw, though. Yeah.
Yeah. We have Mimi here. Oh, we don't use that, but our relatives do. And I used Graham.
Oh, Graham. Yeah.
Probably because I couldn't say multiple syllables or something. I don't know. Anyway, so we didn't really talk about this, but I'm not even sure when this was announced. A month or so ago, Lenovo announced something called the Think phone, right? Which is a ThinkPad styled smartphone with a red button because, ThinkPad. And it's an Android handset, as you would imagine. But what they talked about at the time was some Microsoft partnership that was going to lead to some interesting Microsoft 365 / Windows 365 experiences. And one of them they've just kind of come clean on this. This is now available. It's got an awkward name. It's all caps, Enhanced Windows 365 App Experience for Android. And what this is it's not an app. It's something that gets integrated into the operating system. It's only available on the Think phone for now, but it is coming to other Android phone makers. And what this phone does is what a lot of phones have done in the past, right? The Samsung flagships do this. The Windows phones used to do this, where you can connect it to a USB-C dock, or these days it would be like a display that has a USB-C dock in it, and then a keyboard and a mouse, and then you get this full screen experience, and you can use it sort of like a computer. The way that Samsung does it is they have an environment called Dex that they've created that's separate from Android, that has nothing to do with Android. The way that Microsoft did it back in the day was actually pretty cool, although it didn't last, which was they also had their own desktop environment because UWP apps at the time would work between Windows 8 or 10 or whatever it was, and Windows Phone would be the same app. So if you use the app on the phone, you get the phone app. If you use it on a big screen, you get the kind of full screen, desktop style app. That lasted about 2 seconds, but it was a good idea. So for this thing, Microsoft 365, of course, is that cloud PC concept. This is Microsoft's Windows desktop in the cloud as a service. And what that means is we're basically getting this kind of Dex style expanded desktop experience over a wire, but you're connecting, what you're running is not on the phone. You're running something that's up in the cloud, and it takes over the screen. Yeah. There are similarities between what Microsoft and Samsung did and this, in that you can keep using the phone as a phone, right? You got all your phone stuff going on there. If you want to, you can use the phone as a trackpad, right? If you don't have a keyboard, you can also use the on-screen keyboard if you want that kind of thing. But it's just a front end for Windows 365. So
the bigger thing to me is that you're carrying your identity in the phone into a virtual
and passing
desktop.
it through. Yeah.
We've talked about this for ages. This idea of I want to use lots of different compute, but I don't want to have to go get my stuff.
Yeah.
So the idea that the phone becomes the proxy for your identity, provides all that identity information to a virtual machine that it has access to the rest of your M365 resources. Like, that's a good idea, a way to temporarily use a computer, and then as soon as you take the phone away, that VM disappears.
Right. years ago, and I don't remember what version of anything it was. It may have been actually Jerry Moskowitz, even. Interestingly, you just mentioned this, but somebody showed me, or somebody was doing something on a phone a million years ago, and it was tiny. And I was like, what's going on here? And they were accessing via remote desktop their Windows server somewhere.
Right.
And I was like, because the screen, it's like this tiny little thing, and you can zoom in on it.
Just because I can do this doesn't.
And that's why I said, what are you doing? Like, what is the point of this? And it's like, look, obviously this is not the greatest way to do this, but at least I can do this, and that's better than not being able to do it. Right? If something goes wrong, I want to, whatever it might be, I want to reboot the server, whatever.
Like RDP everywhere.
Yeah, but this solution is actually much more interesting, right? Because it's going to be, literal Windows 11 desktop experience right on a big screen.
Well, also as much compute as you need, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Bandwidth limited, obviously, but we'll see. I always felt like there was a dream there that could be realized where you carried a phone around and you sat down at on a plane, put the phone down, the screen came on, it was your stuff, and you did whatever you want.
Yeah.
You went to work and you put your phone down and the big screen came on, and keyboard and mouse, you got to work. Like I always sort of believed in that idea. And then I've watched them kind of crash and burn for various reasons. But actually it could.
Yeah, you're totally right. Like this is, and it's not so much a bandwidth problem as it's a latency problem. But this comes back to all of the virtual desktop stuff.
Right.
So,
That's right.
You're typing on a machine that's nowhere near you. So how is that going to behave?
Still easier problem than gaming.
Fair.
But the fact that you have M365 on your phone, which means you have M365 console that's inherently in the cloud, and now you can harness a virtual machine, essentially a virtual desktop, to provide additional access to that.
Right.
It solves a ton of problems for doing that. Like now think of this from a hot desk office perspective. Right. We used to have a bunch of other ways to pull your profile into different machines for hot desking. This is a way better way to go about this.
Yep.
To the point where maybe you do have a rack of machines in your office that are actually hosting the virtual machines.
Even in
that latency.
I don't know what happens here. I mean, I'm just inventing things now, but I having worked in the education space, I mean, the notion of wiping out a classroom of PCs back in the day after a class left was a nightmare. And Chromebooks do a little bit, do a better job of that, obviously. But like there's something where it's like, kids are just walking in with their phone, like, boop, you're in, oh, boop, you're out. And then you're not wiping anything. That thing is just a dumb terminal, essentially, right?
Well, and now you would have the cloud, but you'd have this. I mean, Microsoft's been trying to find applications for Win365 really hard for a long time.
Yeah.
The idea of having a larger compute resource, but the identity's contextualized on the phone. You can run it in the cloud, or you could run it on-prem, maybe in a machine that's managed by Microsoft effectively. Like this might be exactly the product for the post-pandemic office where everybody's hot desking.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, it has to. This is super early days. So who just asked me if I remembered Windows? Come on. I wrote the book about this. Anyway. I remember it. Anywho, I mentioned it. I didn't say the name of it, but this makes sense to me. The issue is it's only on one phone, right? I guess the way they've decided to deploy this is I guess an app is not going to work. So, they have to work with handset makers. We know that Microsoft has a big partnership with Samsung. I would expect it to come there as well. So we'll see. It's a good idea. And we'll see. I don't even know what the uptake is on Microsoft or Windows 365 either, right? I mean, this may be a good solution for a product no one's using yet, but it's early days. So.
And are you going to talk about the $2,200 iPhone?
No, I wasn't, but we can. What's the 22?
That's the new iPhone 15.
Oh, if you get the with the terabyte version, it's
with a terabyte in your phone.
I don't even fill 128, so
yeah,
I'll never need that.
Well, there's some people who are always complaining about not enough space, so Apple's got
so people are creating, movies and things on an iPhone. I mean, I can see.
That's really where that space comes in because
this is like the $2,200. You can buy a pretty nice camera for that.
Yeah, no,
but you can't call on that camera.
Right, that's right. Hold on, guys. I got a phone call. No, I know. I hear you, obviously, but it's an interesting idea. Well, it's like not that we talk about like the Mac Mini Studio. Is that the right name? The Mac Studio.
Mac Studio, yeah.
Which is basically a tall mini. I mean, this satisfies the same part of the market. It's like they want something small, but it has to have a lot of stuff in it. It's kind of a neat little, they probably don't sell very many of them, but I'm sure the people that own them love them, so.
I love mine.
There you go.
I can do so many things at once.
He's the kind of tool I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm the tool. It is me.
I didn't want to name that. No, it's a nice little machine. It's nice.
Yeah, it's
well, we will talk about Apple in a second, but first, Qualcomm this week. We're waiting on Qualcomm Nuvia, but Qualcomm this week extended their partnership with Apple to supply their like 5G, modem cards, basically, which is all the sign we need to know that Apple has completely failed at doing this themselves. They bought the Intel modem business a few years back. I don't remember. Apple is always trying to get rid of their partners. They've been really hate Qualcomm for obvious reasons. And they can't do it. That's funny. So Qualcomm will be around for at least 3 more years. So all of the
I'm
iPhones,
delighted that you're delighted.
I just think it's funny because they hate them so much. And all of the iPhones released through at least 2026 now will have Qualcomm chipsets in them, ensuring that the cancer spreads. So
and you're meaning that metaphorically, I presume.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Intel mentioned some time ago, I think some months ago, I think this notion of next generation Thunderbolt, but they've come clean. It's going to be called Thunderbolt 5, surprisingly.
Thunderbolt. I thought we were done with that. Isn't this all just USB?
No, we're not.
Oh, please.
So, obviously more bandwidth, more, you can have 3 4K monitors at 144 hertz, multiple 8K monitors. What's the bandwidth on this thing? It must be 120 gigabits per second. But don't worry, all the USB cables you buy for this thing will not be marked, and you'll have no ideas which one work with it, because that's what USB is, and God, what is wrong with our planet? But
you wanted a universal cable connector, and you got your universal cable connector.
No one said anything about the cable. Universal. No one talked cables. That was dumb. We didn't really think that one through.
It wasn't about the cable part, just the connector.
You can't look at a cable, most cables, and have any idea what it even does. I mean, I don't know how you have to just test it. I guess stupid. But at least it plugs in both ways.
Yeah.
It is so frustrating how you can hold up any cable and go, so what is it? Part of that's the other thing too that's frustrating is there is actually a set of symbols that they talk about.
Yep.
You put on the thing and then it will tell you.
Every once in a while you'll see it.
Every once in a while you get a cable that's like, we don't care about design. We're actually going to put the little icons on there.
God,
of course, then I have to have a little laminated wallet card that has little icons on there, so I can go, okay.
You put little tags in each one of them.
It's right next to my card that has all of the laundry symbols, so I know what each of those mean. Do not bleach. Can transfer speeds at 20 gigabytes. Wait, that's my other card.
My problem is I would like to keep the cable that comes with some device. Like if I got a Thunderbolt dock or whatever it is, I want to keep the cable that came with that thing, Except that cable's usually a crappy cable. Like I like nice cables. But I want to know what comes with what. And even that's really hard. I have all these USB cables, and I clean stuff up every once in a while. Sometimes I'm like, I can't figure it out. I'm throwing these all in. I don't care.
Oh, we got to get Paul a labeler.
I've done some cable purging in this move, let me tell you.
Oh, I bet.
Well, let me give you a little hint at your future history, because if your wife is like mine, the day after you throw out those cables, she's going to walk up with a Kindle or something and say, hey, what plugs into this thing? You're like, I just literally just threw all of those out.
I don't have any micro B anymore.
Yeah. Why do you have a micro USB anything?
No. But I just like the laundry label tag. That explains why I have all those USB cables hanging on the drying rack.
Yeah.
Nice. You misunderstood. Okay. And then Apple had their event yesterday. It was interesting on a number of levels. I would say I actually went, I don't want to call it research, but I looked up a lot of stuff. And this event, they only announced 2 product line products. It was very interesting. Like the past several years has been a lot more. And I was sort of thinking, I think the reason, and people are, it's boring. They can't innovate anymore, and it's like, guys, the iPhone has been around forever. It's super mature. The smartphone, the whole smartphone industry is super mature. Even Apple's services business, which is now its second biggest business, is really mature. I mean, there's not much they can do there to add to it that would excite anybody. They're in kind of a tough spot. I mean, they're the biggest company in the world. They're fine, but this will be like the first year that their revenues, decrease year over year for the full year, which is, I don't think has happened in the modern era anyway.
Right.
And, things are changing. So it reminded me of Microsoft and their transition to the cloud, which at one point they were describing as software plus services, right? Because they were kind of transitioning to services, and I sort of thought, Apple is kind of a hardware plus services company now. Not kind of, they literally are. And it is their business, but I think they're fine. They're huge. They're going to be, they've obviously their leadership has done a great job. But the interesting thing about that comparison to me as a Microsoft guy is that Microsoft made this transition to the cloud, which was kind of an all new thing and has enabled them to be a big player in AI potentially, if they get it right, which only a few companies can do. And so they're on a growth trajectory as well. I don't care about that part of the company like almost at all, but for Microsoft, good stuff. I don't know where Apple goes from here because they pretty much are hardware and services. Like I don't know what else they could do.
It is tough, right?
Yeah, to kind of expand on it. There's no iPhone coming down the pike, right? There's no next huge thing, I think, on either side of that fence for them. And so, there's the iterative stuff like Apple Watch or AirPods or whatever, that kind of stuff, which is great. It's all great. But I don't know what the next next era is for them. I don't.
That's why I almost think there's been so much push in their computing stuff because they're going to see that start to balance out where the iPhone has been so much the big seller, and now they kind of need more sales in Macs to kind of as the iPhone drops. Because where else do you go from here?
I don't know.
The Vision and all of that stuff. The Vision Pro exists in its own weird, strange space, and it's just not. Yeah.
I looked at because it's 2023. I looked at 5, 10, 20 years ago. So 2003. It's funny if you go back and look at their final quarter of that year. Their best-selling product at the time was the Mac. They sold some 100,000 something units. It wasn't very many. The iPod not doing great, but was the second biggest business. And the thing that became services. I don't remember now what they called it, but contribute. It was App Store stuff mostly. Probably it was like $127 million in revenue. It's like, nothing. Today, they make, I think it's over $20 billion in revenues per quarter from services, and it's all tied to the success story that is the iPhone. It's an astonishing business. There have been, I haven't done this in a while, but there are many quarters, I'm sure this has just happened, but where the iPhone is bigger than all of Microsoft, from a revenue perspective.
Right.
That's how big this is. So they're going to be okay. It's not like they fall away or anything, but I mean, I sort of feel like they are in a maintenance phase. I mean,
what else do you do? What else can you do?
Right. They'll fend off antitrust because that's going to be the problem they're going to have.
Yeah. The gatekeepers, that whole thing. That's why
Apple invented gatekeeping. They perfected it.
When you were talking earlier, that's the name of their security.
Of course it is.
One of their security tools. When you mentioned Microsoft making changes to give people the ability to delete apps from the phone or from the operating system, that's what the EU is requiring of them.
Right.
And what I found interesting about that, and you and Leo and Richard probably talked about this earlier, but I did find it interesting how Microsoft was like, yeah, even though right now Bing and there was one other thing that they had that wasn't included. They're like,
it
didn't meet the quota or whatever. But they're like, even though you aren't looking at those yet, but you're about to be, we welcome any and all. And they're just like, let it happen. We're playing
they learned
ball.
their lesson, and I've written about this a couple of times, but because we're going to move into some antitrust stuff soon. But the Brad Smith is their now president or whatever he is, or senior president, whatever he is, but he's chief counsel. He came on right at the end of the antitrust stuff 20 years ago and said, guys, settle and agree and just do what they want and stop fighting. And other companies take different approaches, I guess. We'll talk about that in a moment, but we'll see how Apple handles it. I mean, Apple tends to be passive aggressive. Like they'll disagree publicly and then just do it, like they're doing that with USB-C. They're probably going to they're doing it with right to repair. Apple just came out and supported, this. I mean, they supported a big California right to repair law after lobbying against it for years. So
they'll never make hay about being compliant with that stuff. They'll just complain and then do it.
Well, and they'll also play that port cable game because they'll say, "All right, you want USB-C? Great. How do you feel about USB 2? Because that's what we're putting in the iPhone. Congratulations."
It's the malicious compliance has been the kind of
the pettier the better. Can we hurt our customers while we do this? Yeah, let's do that.
So they love us anyway.
Yep, they're not going to care. Anyway, Apple's doing great. So, and then
is that the end of mobile?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we'll take one more break,
right.
and then we'll come back to talk about antitrust and Microsoft 365. I want to tell you about CashFly, who is quite literally bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. Great sponsor we've had on the network for many years. CashFly is celebrating TCP Anycast's 20th anniversary. Since 1999, CashFly has held a track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery. CashFly pioneered the use of TCP Anycast in 2002, an innovation that CDNs continue to build upon to this day. So other CDNs are going, oh, we got to get into this game. With more than 3,500 clients in over 80 countries, organizations consistently choose CashFly for scalability, reliability, and unrivaled performance. CashFly's smart image optimization, it's a fast and secure image processing service that allows you to transform and optimize your images on the fly. Large, uncompressed images can significantly slow down your website, resulting in poor user experience and lower search engine rankings. So get ready to deliver personalized and engaging visual content effortlessly. With CashFly, you will get ultra low latency video streaming that will deliver video to more than 1 million concurrent users, lightning fast gaming, which delivers downloads faster with zero lag, glitches, or outages, mobile content optimization that offers automatic and simple image optimization so your site loads faster on any device. It's the only CDN built for throughput, delivers rich media content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods and 30% faster than other major CDNs. 30% faster. Flexible month-to-month billing is also available for as long as you need it, and discounts will come in once you kind of settle in and have these fixed terms that you are after. You can design your own contract when you switch to CashFly. So join CashFly, the world's fastest CDN. For a limited time, CashFly is offering a free 5 terabyte tier plan. For other plans, learn how you can get your first month free at cashfly.com. That's CACHEFLY.com. Thank you, CashFly, for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. I'm Mikah Sargent filling in for Leo Laporte. He will be back next week, but we are joined, as we always are, by Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, and it's time to do the Microsoft 365 dance. Why did I say that? I have no idea, but that's just
Is there a dance?
Is there a dance? You know, the 365. No, that's...
Well, Richard and I do have kind of a jazz hand things related to PowerPoint, so that probably makes sense.
That'll work.
At least in that context. I don't remember where that happened, but I still think of it from time to time and just laugh out loud. And then my wife's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Richard, it's just which
Jazz
was
hands.
I don't remember the conversation exactly, but it was like I said, "Well, you know why the Excel icon is green, right?" And it's like, "No, why? Money." I'm like, "Oh, that makes sense." You know, it's like, why is the word icon blue? It's like, because writers are suicidal. They're always upset.
They're always sad, yeah.
And then we were like, why is PowerPoint purple? And then we were like, jazz hands.
Well, that's
so
great.
This is what we do in our free time. So Dennis Austin, who was a co-creator of that software, Microsoft PowerPoint, has passed away. So I've been writing a series. I would have written about this anyway, but I added this to a series of articles I'm writing about tech nostalgia. And this product was invented by someone named Robert Gaskins, who I actually heard from this past week in a very prickly way to correct a very minor mistake. But anyway, he's a genius, so that's fine. And he has also written a book, which you can get for free from his website or for $2.99 from Kindle, called Sweating Bullets, Notes About Inventing PowerPoint. Get it? He created it, or he invented it. He co-created it, if you will, with Dennis Austin, the person who just passed away, originally on the Mac, right? But then Windows 1.0 was announced. So like, we got to put this on all GUIs. We're going to put it on Windows. And the company, this was the mistake I'd made. The company was called what is it called? Where do we see it? Forethought, which I called Forefront twice by mistake. Forefront was notable for a couple of reasons. One was it was Apple's very first investment in 1987. And it was Microsoft's first major corporate acquisition, although they had acquired a very small company previously that year in April 1987. Microsoft also bought the company for $14 million 1 week after they shipped the first version. So, which is kind of interesting. And they brought it into their graphics business unit, which is a funny thing to think about. But back in the day, remember, it was all MS-DOS since we were just making that shift to GUIs. And they were going to build a bunch of apps like this. And of course, it was the beginning of Microsoft Office, which was released first on what? The Mac.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So in the early days, it was Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I feel like Excel might have also debuted first on the Mac. I could be wrong about that, but
there's 100 Excel people who are ready to type something.
Yeah, PowerPoint absolutely did. So, and PowerPoint is, of course, both loved and hated, right? I mean, there are so many famous memes about it, and it's been on SNL as a joke. It's been in cartoons. But and when I was in the same college environment, I referenced earlier with the networking stuff, and I remember our phrase was "those who can't do PowerPoint."
Yeah.
So that was easily, almost 30 years ago. So anyway, unfortunately, he has passed away, 76 years old. I think an important person in the history of our industry. So there you go. We already talked about USB-C ports on the new iPhones. One of the little, in case it's not obvious, the iPhone Pros, 15 Pros, have USB 3 ports, so they can do 10 gigabits per second data transfer. The non-Pros only have USB 2, which is what Lightning was, 480 megabits per second, so it's about 20 times slower. So have fun with that. Hopefully you won't have any big 4K videos to transfer. Or whatever. So it's just kind of a cheap way to differentiate the Pro and the non-Pro.
Yeah. Do Android phones? Does the latest Samsung phone? Yeah. What speeds
that's
do
USB
they get?
3. Yeah.
USB 3.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now, it does that cable. It comes with in the box support. Whatever. No, I don't know because I don't care. I only make fun of Apple, so who knows? I just
you know who you are, Paul, and I appreciate that.
I am not hypocritical. I am ironic. I don't know.
It's all satire here, folks.
I actually don't know. I just don't know. I don't care too much. I don't use a Samsung phone, whatever. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting, right? Because there's different ways you could approach antitrust, and like I said, you could fight it. Google's fighting it. We'll talk about that in a second. Intel fought it in Europe 10 years ago, lost, and then 8 years later won, which is a little weird, but Microsoft fought it, lost big, and then it wasn't so bad in the end, but then they lost a decade, and here we are with Google, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook. So, that was part of the fallout from that. But this gatekeeper thing in the EU is really interesting. And aside from some of the obvious questions, like they make changes only in Europe, like Microsoft is doing with Teams and Microsoft 365, it is kind of interesting to think about, like what products and services might be the most affected by this.
Yes.
And in our space, I think they're actually already going after the big one, which is Microsoft 365, right? I think this is the one area where Microsoft is legitimately dominant. But I think the rest of the company, I have to really think through. But I mean, the cloud, they're a distant second place. They're big, but distant second place. Operating systems. I mean, Windows has 1 billion users, but compared to iPhone and Android, whatever, it's not. Maybe it's something they could look at, I guess. But gaming, obviously not. But office productivity, I think that's the big one. I do think that's the one we got to look at. I'm not saying Slack's right. In fact, I've said very explicitly Slack is wrong. But I do think that this should be looked at. And also, nobody wants like regulators or governments designing products per se. That's how we get things like the browser ballot. But then again, when you force Microsoft not we, but Microsoft is going to design integration between Teams and the rest of Office. Or Microsoft could design an integration point that would be between whatever and the rest of Office, and that would benefit everybody, right? I mean, it wouldn't hurt Teams per se, not technically. Maybe that is a better approach. And I don't know who came up with that idea, but that is what they're doing. So that's not so horrible. but that's the new Microsoft. That's the Microsoft that's like, yeah, whatever you want, we'll do it.
Yeah,
as long as you have raised the issue, we will change.
As hands after you said that, is that what?
Yeah, no, not exactly.
It's purple.
Yeah,
no, we'll do it. No, really.
Well, we'll see. But they're only doing it in Europe. Give Apple a little credit, by the way, doing USB-C everywhere. Apple has a history of not always doing that. I mean, the US iPhones only are eSIM, which I hate. But I think the rest of the world, or certainly Europe, is a combination of SIM and eSIM, which is what they used to be. So they could have just done USB-C in Europe, right? To be jerks.
Yeah, I'm glad they did not.
But they didn't. So
I think, and this has been a fascinating thing too, is that the Lightning change being its own internal, there was so much more purchasing that folks had to do and adjusting. Whereas this time around, anyone who's purchased a product in the past, 3-4 years, at least is going to have one USB-C cable, surely. You know what I mean? Yep. So I think it's a little bit, it works all the way around.
We're going to be buying like lightning cable whisk, what do you call them? Or chair, what do you call them? What's the word I'm looking for? Whisk, not whisker. Witcher chairs?
Wicker
chairs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Vermont barns or something.
Yes.
Like we got
some hipster somewhere.
Yeah, those are going to happen. It'll be like a lighting fixture that is all light.
Oh man, I'm going to have to do that now. Thanks.
Because people have millions of these, or lots of these things out in the world. So yeah, but you know what? That's okay. You ever find like what was the old connector called? The thick connector?
That was the 30-pin dock connector. It even had a long name.
Yeah. I mean, you find one of those, you're like, my God, I can't believe we ever used something like this.
I know. Isn't it wild? And
so this is
I've seen so many folks that went to the iPhone event. They were posting photos from their hotels, and they had those clock radios with the 30-pin dock connectors
that are still in the hotel. Exactly. Yep.
You can't get the device anymore, but you can find the dock.
No, and the funny thing is, those things are in hotels all over the world. The gym equipment in my gym, because my gym is from 1979, has those connectors as well. So I can't connect. No one can connect a device these days. Stupid. But one of the things Apple is doing now, and people are ripping on them for it because it's a $29 part, but they're offering a Lightning to USB-C connector so they can use their phones in cars and whatever else has this connector. And it's supposed to work pretty universally. It's supposed to be great. That never occurred for these devices. Like, it would have been kind of nice if there had been a dock connector to Lightning adapter that you could just, put in your travel bag. And if you showed up at a hotel and wanted to listen to your music when you woke up or whatever it is people are doing with these things, that it could work. I don't recall that being a thing,
Yeah, there were a few docks that kind of worked in the reverse. If you had a 30 pin,
and you it would be either one or whatever. Yeah,
but not so much. Yeah, I think I saw one, but it was never by a Belkin or an Anchor or something like that.
I just coming up with this at the top of my head, but honestly, I think that's the difference between Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. Tim Cook is super interested in the environment and universal fairness and all. I think he's just more of a touchy-feely guy, and I think Steve Jobs was like, screw it. We aggressively move past things. That's what we're doing. Like, I don't think he ever gave it a second thought.
I agree with you.
And he was what about landfills? What about landfills? We'll build an Apple store in the landfill. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's all good.
I don't think you're wrong. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Even so I've heard, and I know this is not a Apple show, but I've heard between just yesterday and today, so many people complaining, and I understand about the 20 minutes of environment stuff. Look, I get it. It wasn't super funny. It was 20 minutes. It took a long time.
Funny. I want to hear about the minor bits of humor that were in there, but go on.
But my point being that they clearly were, because the complaint is like, this is one of your big events of the year, and this is your time where you talk about I think that they did take the time to talk about what the company is saying they find important. To spend a full 20 minutes on that is saying that they have that much, that they want to appear at least to have that much concern for it. I think to call it a marketing oversight is incorrect. I'm not saying any of the rest of it, but to say that was not intentional, I think is something I call.
I think a lot of people found it very tedious, and I don't mean tedious. To say it's not laudable, but we came here for, like, you were literally making me wait to learn about the new iPhone so you can talk about this self-serving nonsense. Like, it was like, seriously. Yeah. And you're talking about like shipping iPhones on a boat. You're still shipping iPhones from Asia. Here's an idea. You want to save the environment? Stop doing that.
Yes. Oh, I
That
agree.
would solve it.
I 100% agree.
You
in
can close the
sense
ozone
that-
hole right now. Stop making iPhones.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
You're still a company that makes money. Like, you don't pretend that you're some like altruistic, entity
Right.
that is just,
Yeah, you did become the largest company in the world because of your greenwashing.
Yeah, it's
Right.
just, it's a little, it was a little much. That's all.
Yeah, again, I don't have any problem with any of that. I agree that that it felt very tedious and it did feel very back patty. But the argument seems to be that Apple, that it was a misstep for them to do so, and that they, what was the marketing team thinking? I think they were thinking very clearly.
I'm not an Apple expert. I guess I'm a closet Apple, whatever I am. But one of the first things he said was, "We're going to talk about two products, the iPhone and Apple Watch." And I was like, "Oh, that's not good.
Yeah,
that's not good." There have often been 8 or 12 products at this event. This is very concerning. And, I think they padded it a little bit with this. Like, it really kind of highlighted how little they had to
talk about,
which is the reason everyone is watching. No one is tuning in to find out about your environmental stance. No offense.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean to, again, it's laudable. I don't mean to downplay it, but no one on that stream was looking for this.
Right.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's like, I don't like the direction their presentations have taken post-pandemic. They've turned into these kind of swirly special effects video, like Hollywood. Like, what guy on stage? Come on, let's just show us
to the
slides.
point. Yeah.
PowerPoint would solve this problem nicely. You can't do any of that.
Oh, wow. Shots fired.
Yeah, I said it. Anyhow. Steve Jobs, by the way, infamous hater of PowerPoint, later created, what was it called again? Keynote.
Yeah.
Ironic or
and it's very
hypocritical.
swirly
at him
too.
as well.
It is very swirly.
Yeah, very swirly. Yep. Anyway, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
And Paul wants to give Steve Jobs a swirly.
Yeah, exactly. I don't wish ill on anybody.
No.
Except when I do. So
in the cold dead of night when I do, but no one knows about that.
25 years ago-ish, Microsoft went in front of a federal court against the DOJ and got their butt handed to them over a series of wonderful, wonderful days. It was the greatest time of my life. And what I just learned this week is that I'm not the only one that longs for those days, because the New York Times, which doesn't really care about anything that I can tell these days, is treating this like it is 1998. They're literally doing live coverage every day. They've got like a live feed. It's up at the top on a scroll thing. And they're pretending that anyone who reads this paper cares in the slightest about this. But I do. And I am so excited because Google chose to fight. Cannot wait to see what comes down on Google from this. Yeah. Oh, and we already got one. So day one, a lawyer for the government, for the DOJ in this case, because there are states involved too. So it's different lawyers. But I think it was a DOJ lawyer, just said, yeah, Google pays Apple $10 billion a year to be the default search on iPhone. And that number goes up every single year. That's what it was last year.
Wow.
And and that confirms the rumors, right? We had sort of heard this vaguely, but now it's just a fact. It's out in the world. And I think that is so beautiful.
What if they didn't pay that? Like, would they switch to Brave or Bing or like?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. So the problem is we're in a weird spot now. $10 billion, even to Apple, is money, right? So if Google was like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore, we know everyone's going to choose Google search anyway. We don't care. Yeah. Apple would, but they could go to Bing or to Brave or DuckDuckGo or something. I don't know. They rumored to be working on their own search engine, right? I mean, they love to eliminate partners.
They were always working on everything to get rid of all partners.
What do you do with Microsoft's like, so they'd be like, hey, so what do you think? You guys could maybe give us 11 billion. What do you think? And they're like, we could give you nothing. How does that sound? I just don't see anyone else paying for this because there's no payoff to it. When Microsoft sponsored the NFL with Surface devices, they had to build those special padded nonsense things to put around them because players and coaches were chucking them everywhere. Everyone called it an iPad. Yeah. So Microsoft paid billions of dollars. Their name, it's still there. It's everywhere. So you see Surface everywhere. It's an iPad, And by the way, I don't get me wrong. The iPad would have smashed too if they didn't put a special case on it. I'm not complaining about that. But how awful would it be if Microsoft paid billions of dollars to get Bing on the iPhone, and then the story was 78% of iPhone users switch it to Google immediately. Right?
Oh, that's a good point.
That is the worst PR imaginable.
Oh,
so this is like a no-win situation for anybody,
Holy cow, I hadn't even thought about that. For the first time,
still doesn't explain
users
why
learn how to switch.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Like, why
right?
would
I mean, you could see
why does Google pay the money? Like, it's bad for everybody except Google.
it's kind of a copay. So what they're doing is they're what's the phrase for this? It's not copay is not the right term. It's a there's a term for this. It's a it doesn't matter what it's called. Revenue share. So I mean, the idea is that this audience is so valuable because remember, like iPhone users tend to spend more money on stuff than Android users. It's a fact. I mean, they are generally speaking richer and are more valuable to advertisers. That's why. Because you can stick a search page up on the web, and that's a Windows user. Who wants those guys? You want the iPhone guys. Like those, they have proven that they like spending money on nothing. It's perfect.
But you're gonna get them one way or the other. Why pay for it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
what are they getting for paying for this?
It will be interesting to see. Right. Well, so I mean, Google it's not just Apple, right? So Google pays in other cases. They pay others to not go with alternatives. There's all the stuff we remember from the early.
They do earn money off of this, though, right?
This is pretty anti-competitive too.
That means they earn $10 billion from it, basically.
Yeah, they have to
assuming
at least
it's a 50-50 split. Yeah, I don't know what the split is. Yeah, they earn billions as well. Yep.
Because we're doing a search, and so then they can serve us ads, right? That's the idea, that in the search that we do,
and you learn something about this audience, right? For all of the what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone nonsense.
Yeah, so maybe this got less to do with being default search and more to do with telemetry.
Yeah.
Oh,
if your rephrase is that
please,
we pay $10 billion a year
demographics,
for iPhone
and telemetry.
telemetry.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you might be right.
That makes more sense to me.
Google is saying the same thing Microsoft said, which is people that use our products because they're the best. Like Google Search is the best. That's why people use Google Search. And by the way, that is true. There's nothing wrong with that statement. The problem is it's only half of the fact, because the other fact is Google is also actively working to discourage and destroy any competition that may rise to end its monopoly. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with monopoly. That it's what Apple's doing, the maintenance thing. It's the illegal maintenance of a monopoly, and it is the denying of innovation to an audience that might have a better product in a few years if Google just didn't run roughshod over this industry. So yeah, right now they absolutely are the best product. People argue with me sometimes over this for some reason. All you have to do is use Bing for a couple of minutes to understand why Google is the best. But I don't know. I think that's just common sense. But we'll see. There's a disruption happening now with AI, and it's possible that ChatGPT or some other OpenAI service or something that uses OpenAI, if Microsoft gets really lucky, could steal share from Google or even displace it someday in the future. But with these kinds of deals in place, it's going to be a lot harder, right? This is how they maintain it. So anyway, that's my soapbox. And one last AI story. In the wake of Microsoft's Bing AI stuff from February, Adobe was one of about 1 million companies that announced they were doing AI stuff. And they are putting their AI capabilities under the banner of Firefly, and they're imbuing these capabilities across their Creative Cloud, Express, Experience Cloud offerings, everything. And it's already generally available. They just shipped it this today, actually. So this stuff is now available. There's a big Adobe event coming up in less than a month. There's going to be a lot more of it because this is going to be how they expand all these capabilities. But the interesting thing about the Adobe stuff, actually there's two, I guess, right? Because they came out of the gate with images like you would expect, Photoshop, like background removal, right? Mm-hmm. Is that they added video support as well. So they're actually doing this in Premiere too. And
really?
It's not just
okay,
audio,
that's
but
big.
video. Yeah, very interesting, right? So it's just literally across the board for all the Creative Cloud stuff and everything around it. So big stuff. I'm sorry. The second thing, sorry. The second big thing is they were the first of the big AI companies to offer indemnification. They are using their own internal, wholly owned databases of image and video information to create their models. None of this comes from the public. So you can be sure as a creative professional, when you pay Adobe the $100 a month or whatever it is you're paying them for Creative Cloud these days, that you are safe, that the stuff you used, the text prompts and everything you use in whatever product you're using in Adobe will be safe. It's not going to be stolen from somewhere. So good.
Yeah, this is, I was just using this tool the other day, still in preview, and was quite impressed with its ability to generate stuff that actually is usable, despite having all of these protections on it. One would think that
because you hear that and you're like, oh, this is going to make stickmen.
It's going to be a blob.
No, it's actually really good. Yeah.
Here's an image of a scale.
Yeah, nice.
That was generated, and then I've also got
like a
one
tarot card or something.
Yeah, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail about it because I've been talking about it every day this week. I am raising money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and so this Saturday I'm running a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And basically, what people do is by donating, they can impact the game. So they can give someone a potion or magic items and stuff. And these cards, there's a deck in Dungeons and Dragons called the Deck of Many Things, and it's like a scary thing to draw from because you can get some really cool, great stuff, but you can also get some bad stuff. And just for fun, I decided to also add in some random cards that I made, but I'm not that artistic. And so I had these generated.
This is the exact right use for AI to do something that you don't usually have to do, that you're not skilled at, and then you move on with your life, right? This is
and then exactly.
Also, I like that you're using magic to solve a science problem. And we used to have the notion of something called the bag of infinite holding in Dungeons and Dragons, which I assume is very interesting.
Yes.
Or related to what you just said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there. You can still get the bag of holding.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, still has a lot. This was real quick. That's my favorite one.
Nice
it's with a ship. For people who are listening, it's a ship in an ocean. But that I used Adobe Firefly. I had to use it online, and you have to use it
in Express or whatever.
Yeah, because you have to use it in Express. If you just use it on its own, then it'll put a huge whopping watermark on the side saying generated by Adobe AI. So if you use it with an Express, it works. But
part of their announcement today was that people use Express, which is the free product, right? If you don't know that, is they can get they get credits each month for this. So you'll get some use of AI, and then you can pay if you want more or whatever. So you don't have to pay for, Creative Suite or whatever it's called, Creative Cloud.
Which is smart because that's a gateway drug.
Indeed.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yep.
All right. Well,
I mean, you can't argue with Adobe's credentials when it comes to graphics,
right?
And I'm excited that they tackled the copyright problem. Like
that is same.
Yeah, they were the first.
You that's the other thing is like I didn't feel comfortable necessarily. You wouldn't feel comfortable using some of the other tools to do this and walk away going, and there's nothing I ever have to worry about.
Exactly.
This,
especially for this charity.
Exactly. I
hope you guys are okay.
Yeah, that's 100%. So to know that they've got all that in place and are willing to back it up, that tells
they're
you
indemnifying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good.
And you know what? Maybe you'll be using that instead of Paint.
Let's not get crazy. So,
also, Mikah, it's really cool that you're doing this D&D thing. That's really a neat way to raise some money and have some fun at the same time. Good on you, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because these are going to be like very high level characters, so they're going to have all sorts of magic they can cast and stuff. It should be fun. Thanks.
Nice.
All right, let's move on to talk about dev.
Yeah, randomly a couple of dev-related topics this week. .NET 8 has been in development.
Annual development cycle.
Yep. We are 2 months away from its release. So we hit release candidate 1. We will hit release candidate 2 in October, and then they will release it in November, probably at .NET Conf, which is a virtual conference they're having, I want to say 14th to 16th, something like that.
Yeah, right on top of Ignite. Exciting.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. So just the latest version of Microsoft's development platform. There's a bunch of pieces to it. The one I'm keep my eye on because of the client stuff is .NET MAUI, which is their kind of Flutter alternative, which is the Xamarin-based environment where you can create apps for iOS, Android, Mac, or Windows.
Oh, yeah.
Arguably, this is the V3 of MAUI, which, as we know in Microsoft World, makes the good version.
Yeah, exactly. So fingers crossed, because I got to tell you, so far, a little dicey, but
it's a tough problem they're trying to solve. No two ways about it.
Yeah, I agree. And then finally, this one kind of came out of nowhere.
You're going for this, are you? I'm impressed.
What's that?
Oh boy, yeah, this is
talk about
okay, so you guys know this topic, so I'm just curious. I don't know what to think of this. So Unity announced that starting January 1 next year, they're going to have a runtime fee that is based on game installations.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's almost like you don't know how games are used these days. So they have addressed, I guess, reinstalls. Like if I, as a customer, install a game that uses the Unity libraries and then blow away my computer and reinstall, I guess they won't get double charged or whatever. But a lot of games are like, stream from the cloud or are part of a subscription service where you use it for a little while and then you're not really, I maybe an hours played thing might be a better metric. It seems like kind of a weird. So they're either onto something or they are about to disappear because I don't know. Unity's huge. I mean, it's in the game. It's huge.
But at one point, I think it was more than half of the indie market.
Yeah. Right. Because they didn't have this kind of a fee. Yeah. And there were a lot of developers that come out and said, hey, I get bad news for you. If you do this, I'm out of business. Like I can't afford to do this.
Well, especially if you're in a distribution where you aren't collecting a fee for each install. So how the heck can you pay a fee for each?
It's crazy. Yeah.
I feel like there's a subtext going on here.
Right.
And the subtext is there's a negotiation for an acquisition by somebody.
Okay.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me. And so as you're headed towards that, you're trying to pump up valuation and you need a revenue stream. And so they're trying.
So how closely comparable is something like the Unreal Engine or like what are these
different league? It's the difference between Unity is like a group of folks at a local track rebuilding minis to go racing.
Okay.
Unreal is F1.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Like nobody goes onto Unreal casually. That's a serious team of developers, mostly C++ programmers.
So, all right. So a lot of the indie, in other words, this is the easier bar to
This is the entry path, right? That was the whole thing with Unity. With C#, easy way in, simple tools, great library sets. You can get a side scroller working in an hour. You can get a basic 3D model in an afternoon. Like it's really approachable and creative ideas go deep in this.
Right. Without roadblocks,
the challenge, of course, is not ultra high performance. You can get pretty good results from it. But when you really want to press against the edges of a video card, this isn't for you. That's what Unreal's about, right? I want to take a video card and make it funny noises. Like, let's go. But I also have 200 people behind me that are going to build the art resources for the 4K version and that sort of thing. Unity, you don't need any of that. It's a creative place to work, not a pressing against the edges place to work. Okay. And I don't have a big problem with people who have made wildly successful Unity games.
Right.
True. Should Unity share in a part of that? Maybe.
So perhaps the model they're really going after here is something that like Apple and Google did with the App Store fees, where what they're really targeting is the top 1% most lucrative games from the big publishers.
Now, once you're making millions,
not the enthusiasts,
right?
Yeah.
I would hope they've just presented it terribly. But the only there's a couple of things here. Like one is we're all trying to do new revenue models in this sort of thing. But I've been having the itch that Unity is going to be acquired for a while. And one of the things
do you have any ideas about
who buy?
Who might want Unity? Like what's the
great question?
Unreal.
Right.
Yeah, like Steam or Epic.
Well, Steam, Epic, Microsoft. Even Sony.
Right.
Like anybody involved in the gaming industry, which is busy rolling up, you're talking about half the indie games.
Yep.
Like you want a clear channel for first dibs at games and game developers. This is
indie games are huge on Xbox because anyone who's so serious about gaming doesn't use an Xbox. No, because because they have a big indie game program. So I can see that. Sure.
Yeah. And so, I just wonder if there's some pressure going on there. And so then then the leadership comes out with, we need to work on revenue streams because our revenue is going to directly affect our valuation and we all get a big check. So let's go torture our customers for a quarter that gets us our sale.
This is dicey to me.
I don't know that it's going to go well. I think they'll probably back out of it and trying with another one. But there's a strategy here in negotiating, anchoring high. So first set a price so high that everybody's like,
That's it.
holy
and
cow.
then
It's
you
like,
answered feedback and you look like a hero.
there's it. Hey, we've been listening. We understand.
Oh,
Like,
my.
listen,
Then you get to where you always wanted to go.
there you
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so
It's
cynical.
not well, listen, we're two middle-aged white guys. You know, it's kind of where we're at. It's our wheelhouse.
go.
No, it makes sense, right? It makes more sense than what they're actually trying to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm kind of disappointed. I'm disappointed myself in being cynical and going,
Yeah,
oh golly,
well,
that's
we
exactly
have
what they're doing.
The effect
Micah,
bleeds
you
onto
thought you
others,
were
and-
cynical. Hang around with
Yeah.
us for a while.
Yeah, they'll just be in
Oh.
tears. Yeah, well, we'll see. I guess I do think the feedback is going to be overwhelmingly negative, and already
Well,
has been.
inevitably,
Yeah.
the question is it
Enough,
damaging? Negative feedback is still feedback, right? Like
I guess
good.
the question is, what's the alternative? Is to unity in the world? Like, what's the other unity?
Yeah.
And,
There's a mittful of small game platforms.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of folks are getting real excited because if Unity's going to eat their own head, maybe we have a chance. But I don't think Unity's going to eat their own head. I think this is very strategic maneuvering going on right now. This is a smart group of folks. There's a reason at the top of the business. They haven't lost their minds.
I said that about Windows 8, but you could be right. You could be right. I
Yeah,
hope
well,
you're right.
you know the difference in Windows 8? They perceived an existential threat, and it made them crazy. There is no threat to Unity except themselves.
That's a good point. It's true. We have seen the enemy, and it is us. And it is our
Philosophical today,
licensing
Paul. I
scheme.
like that.
So,
All right.
okay,
It's
so that's,
time, right?
I guess. Yeah, that kind of eases us into gaming, right? Because it's gaming related. In Xbox, Microsoft announced, like, when was this? Back in the summer sometime, that they were going to retire Xbox Live Gold, which had been around since 2002, and replace it with another Xbox Game Pass subscription, which actually kind of makes sense, right? Because in the world of Xbox subscriptions today, that was kind of the outlier. It was really just about like multiplayer games and whatever. So they introduced something called Xbox Game Pass Core, which is now the entry level, literally as of tomorrow, is the entry level Xbox subscription. And it's actually not just Xbox Live renamed. They're going to give the people who subscribe, the price is not going up. It's $59 a year. It's $9 a month if you want to pay that way. Some collection of games at the time when they announced it. So yesterday, no, actually, I guess it was today, they announced what those games are going to be. And I will now slowly read the entire, there's a list of games. It's actually pretty good. I'll call it some of the good ones. Dishonored 2, Doom Eternal Standard Edition, Fable Anniversary, Fallout 4 and 76, Firewatch, one of the best games ever. Forza Horizon 4 Standard Edition. I guess I am reading through this whole thing. Gears 5, Halo 5, Limbo, another fantastic indie game. By the way, speaking of indie games, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, another fantastic indie game.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good titles on this one.
State of Decay 2, blah, 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 whatever. So by Elder Scrolls Online. That was the game I couldn't think of last week, by the way, when I was talking about MMOs. So actually, this is kind of a nice offering, It's it's aspirational, I guess. I think people who get this are going to maybe enjoy what they get and want more, and they'll pay a little bit more for an Xbox console or PC subscription, which is $10.99 a month, which is, that doesn't sound too bad. It's like $1 more per month if you're paying that way, but when you pay annually, it's actually an even better deal. So
I wonder if this eventually makes Steam move.
Yeah. Right.
Well, they're really making plays here to collect up an awful lot of games to give you that Steam feel where the whole library is there.
Yeah, and it's real. Even like you can do this. You can all do this at home. A little exercise for everybody. If you're not a gamer and never really thought about this, open up the Xbox app on your Windows 11 or 10 PC and look at what's there. It's not bad. It's not as big of a collection as what we get on the Xbox console, but it's actually pretty good. And if Microsoft gets Activision Blizzard, come on, this thing's going to go right over the top. So yeah, I mean, they're really positioning Xbox Game Pass for the future. So that transition happens tomorrow. I hate even having to talk about this topic, but Microsoft has announced an Xbox Mastercard because something Apple envy. I don't know. I don't
reasons.
Yeah,
this worries me because I just think about all the young folks.
I know. So, right. So the current system is that Microsoft across, things like Bing and Xbox has they have a Microsoft Rewards program, right? And The rewards program is kind of nice because if you wanted to earn Microsoft rewards by doing little puzzles and tasks on Bing, you can, and you can use the points you accrue to get little Microsoft Store gift cards or whatever it might be, right? There's nothing wrong with that, I guess, but it's a credit card, and the APR starts at 21%, by the way. That's the lowest it could be, no matter what your credit rating is. And it goes up to 32%, depending on where you're at in that scale. And it's obviously it also has a kind of rewards program. And seriously, why are we making a credit card? I hate even talking about this. This is so awful.
The only place I would say is when you talk about the serious gamer these days, which is like a 30-something, the idea that all their DoorDash and stuff goes through a card that'll get them free games kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but if you look at adults and credit cards, I would imagine that the majority of them just use whatever credit cards. They don't think about it too much, but there's you can kind of play this game and pick the credit cards that are best for the things that matter to you.
There are the point hoarders, and some point hoarders are serious gamers, and you've now given them a card that gives them free games. They were going to buy that other stuff anyway. But
just be careful, people.
Please be careful. That's
what really makes me nervous. Okay, that just came up.
How do you feel? How do you feel, Paul?
I worry. The money is a horrible thing to get behind on. There are people using credit cards now to buy food,
Yeah. Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mean and paying for food and then paying it off. I mean, they're paying for food and mortgaging their current dinner, which is just so scary. It's such an awful.
The grocery app that I use to get, and here I am being bougie privileged person, the grocery app that I use to order groceries to my home so I don't have to go to the grocery store, it has this horrible thing now where at the end it tells you can use this to pay for it in 4 payments. Yeah.
My wife mentioned this to me the other day, which is the only reason I know about it. And my sort of take on that was like, look, a lot of adults have mortgages. There's no problem. It's sort of an accepted thing. It's sort of hopefully an investment, people pay for phones over 2 or 3 years, and it's $25 to $50 a month or something. And the argument is, look, this is a device I use all day long every day, and there's an argument to be made. I've used that process, 0%, 0 points, whatever, 0 percentage point, whatever it is, 0 interest, to buy like an iPhone and then pay it off within 3 months or something, just to make it easy, right? Just to get through the process. Like I've done that. That's fine. But but God, like food. I mean, come on. Like, just be careful. That's all. I worry.
I'm with you.
I worry about that.
All right. What else in Xbox?
Yeah, one more thing. So before the pandemic, Microsoft started a fun event called Minecraft Live. And I believe it happened exactly once in New York City. I think it was on the docks there on the west side of Manhattan. I was invited and didn't go, and now I kind of regret it because the pandemic happened the next year and it never came back. And now they have something that's called Minecraft Live that's coming back, but it is live, but it is not in person. So it will be a virtual event, if I'm not mistaken. It's not in a place. It's in a place, but you can't go there. So you can enjoy it on Minecraft.net on October 15th. The reason that first one was going to be fun was because back then, Minecraft, Mojang or Microsoft, whatever, was talking about the augmented or / virtual reality Minecraft, that they demonstrated one time on stage where it looked like you could fall into the stage because, the squares were, looked like a pit. And it was going to be an opportunity for people to check that out live. And I think that product no longer exists, but then neither does Minecraft Live. So anyway, it's coming back, but virtual. And I think it's next week. What did I say? Did I even say?
Oh,
it is. Oh, no, not next month. Sorry, October 15th. So we'll see. It's bigger and blockier than ever.
All right. Well, that's great.
Yeah, good for you.
Good work, Microsoft. I think we've got our back of the book up next. It's time for the back of the book in mere moments. All right, here we are. Micah Sargent, am subbing in for Leo Laporte, and I'm excited for us to get into the tips and picks of the week. Up first, it's a tip of the week.
Yeah, so Google, after threatening to do this for 2 years, has finally rolled out Privacy Sandbox after receiving tons of feedback and implementing none of it. And I think it is notable that all of the major Chromium-based browsers, except for Microsoft so far, have all said they are not supporting it. Right. So this is this is the new scheme for picking personalized ads, and like Google's like, look, we are going to track you, but at least you can pick the ads. And so my tip is maybe if you haven't already, maybe start looking at other browsers, please. There are lots. Almost every browser is safer and more private than Chrome. Brave especially would be my choice, but if you have to use Chrome, and sometimes you do, I because maybe use multiple browsers, for whatever reason. At least install some extensions that will help block this thing from haunting you around the internet. Like Privacy Badger is my personal choice. AdBlock Plus actually helps a little bit too, plus blocks ads. But better maybe start at least think about it. Think about it. There are huge advantages to other browsers, and I can't think of really many advantages to Google Chrome that are unique to that browser. I really can't. uBlock Origin, someone mentions also. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah, that's true. I happen to use Privacy Badger, but yep, uBlock Origin is also great. Last week I went on a little bit about my what I call digital decluttering. It's actually part of a broader decluttering thing I'm doing this year because we moved out of a house into a small apartment, and we have a lot of stuff trying to get rid of it. And I've done a bunch of it. I finished my documents archive and photos archive, all done. I've gone on and I'm working on still home videos, which I'm re-recording, re-digitizing, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really fun. I found a tape I found the camera, and then inside of it was a tape, and it was a Christmas 2005, the little kids that we had never seen or digitized. And I was like, I'm like, Stephanie, come here, please. And it was like one of those weird moments. Like, it was crazy. So that kind of thing makes it all worthwhile.
I found 2 VHS tapes in my purging.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is 2 different short videos we made the last time I had a real job, which literally was 30 years ago.
Sure.
Making fun of my boss. And the other one was a 1,000-foot dive I took in a submersible.
Oh, boy.
Wow. In the Cayman Islands, when you could do such a thing.
Yeah.
Now
I hope you're going to bring them
yeah.
to a service or whatever. And
I'm going to have to take them to a service as sure as I don't have a player that works.
I have several, maybe a dozen DV tapes, which I have the camera for, but I also have a small number of 8mm tapes that I do not. So I will have to do that for those. I mean, but anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk about that at length, but it's a fun process. It's a tedious process, but it's those little moments where you do something like that where you're like, oh man, like this made it all worthwhile.
All the work is worth it.
Never seen this before. And I put it up in my private, consumer YouTube channel associated with my Gmail account, and then sent links to the wife and kids so they could watch it. Right. Amazing.
Yep. That's so cool.
My kids who are adults. Anyway, as part of that discussion last week, I mentioned WinDareStat, which I love and I've used for a long, long time. But somebody mentioned another tool called WizTree, which is very, very similar. And I thought I should mention it because it's free. It's Donateware, so it gives you a little donate shake up at the corner, But it's exactly like WinDareStat, but it's much faster and it has a much prettier UI. Although basically the same UI, right? Big files are big blocks and all that kind of stuff. It does work great. I pretty much done with that hard part of eliminating big file thing, but I've been using it for the past week on a few small things I've been doing related to this. And actually it is very, very good. So it's worth knowing about. And you could compare them, I guess, but actually it is faster. So it's probably worth it for that reason only.
Awesome.
It's time then for talking about what is on Run as Radio this week.
Oh, right. Yeah. So this week's show with Sonia Cuff, who's a Microsoft IT advocate. And ongoing theme for 2023 has been this doing more with less, just this sort of reality of we're not getting more staff, our budgets are being pressed on. What do you do? Like, where should your focus be? And Sonia is one of those great folks. She's done all the work before. She's been out in the field. She's talking to lots of different teams. She's able to carry a lot of information for folks to just say, hey, this is about trading time. The stuff you always meant to get to. There's often places where you can apply your efforts there, but also getting smarter about talking about the costs of being a sysadmin with the organization, showing more of the value in what you're doing there. We've kind of had about a 20-year run since maybe the .com bust, where there really has been minimal constraints financially on the tech side of businesses, and the pandemic made it even crazier. And now that all of that is subsiding and we're being a little more economically responsible, I think folks have never experienced or are out of practice with really the ROI of system administration. And so that's an angle we went into the conversation about. How do I talk to my CFO about this, or the IT director, to get money spent because it's actually going to save money down the line?
All right. And then I think that brings us to the brown liquor pick of the week.
There you go. Your favorite, right?
Yeah.
And, you always pick these esoteric brands no one's ever heard of. Come on, Richard, what's going on?
Well, I kind of, you called it out last week when I did the Perth 23. Nobody's ever going to have again.
Like, go
right?
on, man.
Yeah, a little cruel. So I swung the other way. Although I have another motivation, and I'll leave it for the end. This week is Chivas Regal, like your $30 blended whiskey, but it's got a great legacy. It's one of the oldest whiskeys out there, really. James and John Chivas are from the early 1800s. They were born in 1810 and 1814, and they were in the luxury good business as relatively young men by the 1830s. So that by the 1850, when they're about 40 years, not even 40 years old, they were the royal grocers to the Duchess of Kent, which you would know as the Queen Mother.
That's like the lyrics to a Christmas song.
Yes. And of course, the point being that once you become get a royal appointment like that, most of the well-to-do in the UK would then buy your products automatically. And so that's how they ended up getting into whiskey, because they had this amazing clientele who wanted a quality whiskey. And in the mid 1800s, whiskey was a very erratic product. The distillation processes weren't that refined. It was hard to get quality. And so blending was the way to go, that you had a blender who would combine whiskeys to get a consistent flavor that folks like. So in 1854, they launched a whiskey called the Royal Glendee, which is their original product. And that continued for another 40, 50 years. The last of the actual Chivas family, Alexander Chivas, passed away in 1893. And by 1895, it was owned by a larger conglomerate of whiskey folks, and no family members remain, but they was always called the Chivas brothers. So, over 100 years of Chivas, even though there were no Chivases anymore. The Chivas Regal, the name is first used for a whiskey that's a 25-year-old blend. So that's a combination of whiskeys where the youngest thing in the bottle was 25 years old, from 1909. Now, that was an expensive whiskey, relatively speaking. It would be costly today as well. But it was a breakthrough whiskey for a lot of folks. This was a high-end whiskey that wasn't a single malt, again, a very consistent product. After Prohibition, we sort of shut down a lot of business for it. They wanted to reduce the cost on whiskey to get it up and running again. And so the Chivas Regal 12 came out in 1939. And that's closer to the modern Chivas we have today, which does not have an age appellation on it, which means it has even younger stuff in it, including some pure grain alcohol, which is normal for a blended whiskey. If you are into doing the tour at the distilleries and so forth, when you go to the Chivas brothers, like that whole place, you're actually going to the Strathisla distillery, which was it's actually one of the oldest distilleries ever made. It was originally known as the Milltown Distillery, built in 1786. So it's one of the very few distilleries from the 1700s that still exists. But it was, and it was originally called the Milltown Distillery. It got named Strathisla for the first time in 1870, but then in 1890 changed it back to Milltown. And then when the Chivas Group bought it in 1950, they renamed it back to Strathisla again. Easily, I've done the tour. It's one of the prettiest distilleries you ever see. It has phenomenal gardens. But as a distillery goes, it's small. It's a great place to start if you've never toured distilleries before, because it's just not that complicated. They've only got 2 sets of stills, sort of mid-size, relatively short-necked. They use conventional. They still have the old malting floors, but they don't use them anymore. They use industrial maltings now. And then they barrel in oak and sherry. They use both dunnage and rack warehouses. So all very conventional. And that is not for making Chivas Regal directly. That is made for making Strathisla single malt, which is rarely bottled by them. You'll typically see Strathisla bottlings by the third parties. The folks like Gordon MacPhail is where you'll find a Strathisla. And I've had the Strathisla 12, lovely space side, straightforward whiskey. But this is a blend that we're talking about, the Chivas Regal. And if you taste it, you'll notice that while it comes from Spain, it's fairly Spey-ish. It has a little smoke in it, a little peat in it, which is not normal for the Spey. And that's an effect of the blend. Now, they don't publish the different places that they buy whiskey from. They do say that Strathisla is their primary component to making Chivas Regal, along with a certain amount of grain alcohol that comes from the lowlands. As again, normal, usually about 50% for a blended whiskey. That's how you get it down to $30. But the other distilleries that come up routinely are Strathclyde and Longmorn. And Longmorn does use peat in their whiskey. So there's a hint there that the flavor you get that makes Chivas Regal itself is that Longmorn added in with the Strathisla. It became a part of the multinational industry of modern Scotch in 2001 when it was bought by Pernod Ricard. And it has been since then. So it's been 20 plus years, and they've modernized their line, and they make a bunch of older variants and so forth. You can spend as much on Chivas Regal as you wish. Although I would argue that the classic at 40% alcohol for $30 is an excellent representation of the product. It was also Hunter S. Thompson's preferred breakfast meal.
Even better.
Yikes.
Understanding that Hunter S. Thompson typically had breakfast at 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
Sure.
And he'd have a shot of it, then he'd take an hour or so. We don't really talk about what he did for that hour, and then he'd have several more, and that's how he'd get his day started. And just to throw the extra layer on here, I brought up Chivas Regal today because it was my father's favorite whiskey, and he passed away a few weeks ago, and we had his memorial yesterday. And so I thought I'd call it out for him that I know this was your favorite, Pops, and I'm sad you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is something that everybody should go and pick up. I guess if you
you've seen it in the store. The thing is, like, everyone recognizes this, right? It does give off a little bit of a.
I don't like their website
vibe.
because they've kind of gotten pulled into. It's in a lot of rap music. It shows up in all kinds of movies and things. Right. And so they're kind of
like it's Courvoisier or whatever.
Yeah. And I would say that it's when I talk about basic blended whiskeys, you're typically talking about Famous Grouse, right? I'd rather drink that any day of the week.
Sure.
Chivas is I would argue, is a nicer whiskey than that as a blend. Truly, none of them are expensive.
And in that statement, Richard, you have shown us that you are not pretentious.
You know what? I can
really
be if you'd like me to be.
No. You know more about this than anybody, but you can still appreciate.
Yeah.
It's like someone being a food snob, but they're like, I like Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Once in a while.
That.
Yeah. There's stuff on the shelf I'm not going to pick up, but if Chivas is what's on the shelf, let's drink it.
Sure.
Right? And I'm not going to feel bad about dropping an ice cube in it. Coke, that's weird. You want Coke, have some Jack, right? But if you're going to drink a blend, Famous Grouse, Chivas Regal, drink them neat, maybe with an ice cube. Nobody's going to be mad at you, and you're going to have a nice drink.
Right. I'm curious about the show. There's a lot of sherry cask whiskey, bourbon these days.
Yeah,
seems to be the trendy.
Well, the sherry industry has also grown, and they have now gotten into techniques for maturing barrels quickly, and it's become a business to make sherry barrels.
Yeah, nice.
They make the sherry barrels that do their initial run through. Like the 3-year-old sherries out of raw wood are not good sherries, but they're good for other things.
Sure.
The barrels are really valuable, so they make the barrels that way as an initial aging. Then they'll move them on from there, and that's provided a lot more barrels for the whiskey makers.
It's good.
It's a funny shtick.
Yeah.
So it is an ecosystem.
Yeah, I actually like sherry cask whiskeys and bourbons. Honestly,
Well, once upon a time, and I think I told this story back when we were doing the whole whiskey story, that the reason they started casking in sherry is because they were buying sherry and it came in barrels, and you got to do something with the barrel anyway.
Yeah, ship it back.
Yeah.
With whiskey in it.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. And so until Spain made it illegal to export sherry in barrels, you have to sell it in bottles. And so then the barrels became scarce, and hence the business around selling barrels grew up.
Right. Nice.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Windows Weekly. As I mentioned, Leo Laporte will be back next week. It was my pleasure to join you on this episode. First and foremost, I should mention that you can tune in every week to watch Windows Weekly at twit.tv/live. If you want to watch the show, record the show live every Wednesday around about 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 1800 UTC. The best way to get the show, of course, is by going to twit.tv/WW and subscribing to the show. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies and your loved ones about Windows Weekly so they too can subscribe. When you head to twit.tv/WW, you'll see a couple of buttons, or actually several buttons. You can click to subscribe to audio or subscribe to video. We've got the plain old RSS feed, but also the ability to kind of jump right into your podcast player of choice: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc. So head there. Now's my time to tell you also about Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. Consider joining the club starting at $7 a month, $84 a year. When you join the club, you get access to a lot of great things. First and foremost, you get access to every single Twit show with no ads, just the content, because you, in effect, are supporting the show. You also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra stuff you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, and special Club Twit events. So when you join the club, you're going to get access to a huge back catalog of a lot of great content that's just there waiting for you. Then you'll also gain membership and access to the Club Twit Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. As Leo calls it, it is the best social media network around. So if you want to join the Club Twit Discord, again, that's at twit.tv/clubtwit. I said starting at $7 a month, not because it's a tiered subscription where you get more the more you pay, but because we've actually heard from folks who said, you keep adding more stuff to the club, we'd like to give you some more money. So we've made that a possibility. But if you pay that $7 a month, you're going to get everything. You will also, yes, it keeps going, get access to special Club Twit shows, including the Untitled Linux show, which is, as you probably guessed, a show all about Linux. Paul Thurrott's Hands-on Windows program. You know him. You know Windows. It's a show that covers Windows tips and tricks, and you will gain access to my Hands-on Mac program if you happen to be someone who watches Windows Weekly or listens to Windows Weekly and also wants to know what's going on in the Mac. You could check out that show. I don't just talk about the Mac. I talk about all of Apple's devices, so it's also a short format show covering Apple tips and tricks. And the very awesome Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson for all of your home theater needs. And soon to be a show from Jason Howell that is all about artificial intelligence. If any of those topics or all of those topics interest you, you got to join the club. Again, twit.tv/clubtwit. $7 a month, $84 a year. All right, it is time. Richard Campbell of Run As Radio. Anything you want to plug, and where should folks go to find your work?
You find me at runasradio.com. And of course, I'm still on the social media formerly known as Twitter at Rich Campbell. And we are in heavy planning right now in rotation for making our fall conference. Well, really first week of December, devintersection.com. There's also an Azure and data component to that, but you can find them all at the same site. And once in a while, in fact, every week I make a .NET ROD.
I was going to say, fairly regularly.
In fact, I don't think we've missed a Thursday in 20 years. So yeah,
pretty regularly. Once in a week.
Somewhat regularly.
Somewhat
That's
regularly.
very impressive. And Paul Thurrott of, is it Thurrott.com? Is that what it is?
I think
yes.
so. Yeah.
THURROTT, Thurrott.com. Where should folks go to find your work?
Well, they're there. I'm also at Thurrott on the social network formerly known as Twitter. A couple of books at LeanPub, the Windows 11 Field Guide and Windows Everywhere. I just restarted the Thurrott.com YouTube channel, which is it's like at Thurrott-com right now. I'm going to try to change that to something shorter soon, but I've uploaded almost 300 videos from my archives as part of that decluttering thing. So there's some good stuff there.
Awesome. You can find me at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can check out any of my shows, iOS Today, which I record on Tuesdays, Tech News Weekly, which I record on Thursdays with Jason Howell. iOS Today, by the way, is with Rosemary Orchard. And then Sundays, where Leo Laporte and I do Ask the Tech Guys. We take your questions live on air and do our best to answer them. Occasionally we get a stumper, but we do have fun doing that show. Again, Richard and Paul, thank you so much for your time today. I had a blast hanging out with you for Windows Weekly. Thank you all out there for tuning in every week. Leo will be back next week to see you all. And I've been told that while his mom is getting settled, he may be going out there maybe once a month or so. So you might be seeing me again on an episode of Windows Weekly here in the not too distant future. But thank you all.
Sir.
Thanks, Mikah.
Hey folks, I'm Ant Pruitt and I have a question for you. How do you think your hardworking team, with a Club Twit corporate subscription plan, of course, show your appreciation and reward your tech team with a subscription to Club Twit? Keep everyone informed and entertained with podcasts covering the latest in tech. With the Club Twit subscription, they get access to all of our podcasts ad-free. And they also get access to our members-only Discord, access to exclusive outtakes and behind-the-scenes footage and special content like the fireside chats that I enjoy hosting. Plus, they also get shows like Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, and the Untitled Linux Show. So, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and look for corporate plans for complete details.